Music, dance, theater. It's time to take a seat on the aisle with Tom Alvarez. Hear from performers, producers, presenters, and creators who enrich our lives in the performing arts. Who's on stage? Here is Tom Alvarez to introduce you.
Hello, and welcome to On the Aisle with me, Tom Alvarez. My guest today is Maestro Dr. Eric Stark, noted artistic director of the Indianapolis Symphonic Choir. Join me now as I go on the aisle for a conversation with Eric. It's my pleasure to have you on the show today, Eric. Thank you so much for agreeing to take the time to do this with me.
It's my pleasure to be with you, Tom. Always enjoy chatting about the art scene and the wonderful things going on in our community.
Well, I've interviewed you several times. I reviewed, I've lost count of all the concerts. I've seen a great deal of your body of work, actually, over my 45, 50 years of covering the arts. So, I pretty much know what makes you tick,
Then I'm in trouble.
Let's go back for those who don't know Dr. Eric Stark. Tell me about your background, and let's start from there. Where'd you come from?
Sure. I grew up in Columbus, Indiana, so just about an hour south of Indianapolis. Consider that my hometown, although I was born in Maine. My family moved to Indiana when I was very young. My mother still lives in the house I grew up in Columbus. And it's always a joy to get to go home for visits and different activities, holidays, that sort of thing. I'm a graduate of Columbus North High School, and from there went to Wabash College in Crawfordsville, Indiana. And my first semester, I was a chemistry major in the pre-med program. And that was kind of had been the plan for a long, long time. I loved science. I loved kind of the idea of helping people. And just always thought as I was growing up that that would be my path. And little did I know just how difficult the number crunching in particular would be in that major. And so in the second semester of my time at Wabash, I realized that that was not going to pan out for me and I needed to pick something else. I tried some different kinds of things. I was interested in literature, and so I thought I might study that, English lit. I had taken a lot of Spanish and I thought that I might enjoy teaching. And one of my advisors said, "Oh, you could teach English as a second language someplace with your Spanish." So I kind of tried that for a little while. Psychology was interesting. But then I realized I had always enjoyed music. Maybe I hadn't realized how much I enjoyed it. I just kind of assumed everybody was in a million choirs and took all of these instrument lessons and everything. I sang in school choirs and church choirs all my growing up years and took some instrument lessons along the way, although I didn't really throw myself into that too much, except for piano. When I started piano, I was pretty interested in that. Took some organ lessons.
How old were you when you started playing piano?
I was maybe 13 or 14, so kind of late. We had a really nice pipe organ at the church where I grew up, and so I ended up taking some organ lessons with the church choir director there. I enjoyed that quite a lot. And so by the end of my freshman year in college, I had decided, well, maybe music is going to be it for me. And I was singing in the Wabash College Men's Glee Club, and the director knew that I played some piano, and so he asked me to accompany a couple of the pieces that the guys were singing. And that was the first time I'd ever done anything like that. But I really enjoyed kind of stepping out from the ensemble and leading in a different way. That kind of gave me the idea, I think, that maybe conducting might be fun too. And I actually took some conducting lessons with him as a freshman and began to get a taste of it. So that's kind of how everything got started that way. I had a wonderful experience at Wabash, spent both semesters of my junior year living in Europe on two different study abroad programs. In the fall, I lived in Vienna and really absorbed all of the music making and stuff that I could while I was there.
I ask you, Eric, what drew you to choral music?
Well, first of all, it was the form of ensemble music making that I knew the best. I had played some instruments, but I never was a band kid. I took some cello lessons, but I was never good enough to be even in a school string orchestra. So part of it was just that was what I knew. I think there's something very deep in terms of a connection between the human experience and singing, because when we sing, our bodies are the instrument that we use. I think there's kind of a mystical connection there that's really very interesting and actually has some spiritual implications too that I enjoy reflecting on and thinking about.
Okay, so you went to Europe, and I'm sure you were exposed to some of the world's finest choral music there, right?
Yes, and opera. I would go to the Vienna Opera just about every week because you could buy a standing room ticket for less than $2. And this was like one of the world's great opera houses. I saw so many operas for the first time in Vienna, believe it or not, the Traviata, Tosca, Bohème, Salome.
Featuring, I imagine, some of the finest artists in the world, huh?
Absolutely, the top singers of the 80s on Halloween night, they planned to do a performance of Verdi's Un ballo in Maschera, Masked Ball, with Pavarotti singing and Domingo on the podium.
Hmm.
And we had to wait all night long to get tickets because we knew there would be such demand for this particular show on Halloween night. So we took our blankets and chocolate and bottles of wine and we sat on the sidewalk all night long just outside of the little door where you get the standing room tickets. And
Sound
then
like a Taylor Swift fan.
yeah, just about right. No shade to Taylor Swift, but I'm not sure I'd stay out all night waiting to get a ticket for
Oh,
that
yeah.
show. We got our tickets and then we went home and took a nap and dressed up in the finest clothes we had and went to see that show that night. And I remember the tenor has a huge aria. I don't remember where it is in the show, but Pavarotti sings this aria and the crowd just went berserk. They wouldn't stop cheering. Pavarotti is, loving the adulation and soaking in it. And pretty soon the audience starts shouting da capo, meaning do the whole song again. And you could see this like body language, Pavarotti on stage looking for a sign from the conductor. Can I sing it again? They really want me to sing it again. And at first, the conductor, you could just see him very subtly shaking his head. No, we're going to go on. But honestly, this went on for about 10 minutes. And finally, the conductor, you saw his hands go up and he shrugged. And so they played the whole aria again.
Oh,
And it
oh.
was just spectacular.
Eric, did you happen to see Pavarotti at his last concert here in Indy by any chance?
I missed that one, unfortunately, but I heard it
Yeah,
was
I,
really
I
good.
can't remember if it was at Market Square. Maybe, I think it was at
I
Market Square.
remember he was there several times, wasn't he?
Yeah, I think that's before they tore it down. Yeah, it
Mhm.
was a historic night. I was there and I'll just never, ever, ever forget it. So, what happened after Vienna?
After Vienna, then I went to Madrid and spent a semester in Madrid. I was a Spanish minor in college and wanted the chance to really focus on the language. And so
Wow.
enrolled in courses at the University of Madrid and got to travel all around the country, Barcelona and Valencia. We even went over to Lisbon.
So, you were trained in your Spanish in the Castilian,
No,
right?
it was, in America, they ignore Castilian Spanish. And so when I got over there, it was a big shock. The pronunciation is different and a lot of the vocabulary, most of the vocabulary is the same, but there are some words that are
Correct me,
different.
is Barcelona in that region, or do I have it mixed up with Madrid? I can't, I can,
Barcelona is in the Catalan region, and so
yeah,
that is a completely different
that's
language.
right.
And we went to Barcelona and experienced that. Of course, they understand and speak regular Spanish there, but the pronunciation was different. So that was kind of fun. But I loved living in Spain and didn't focus so much on music there, although I did take a big stack of solo piano repertoire. And the university had this old yucky upright. It was from the Franco regime. It was just like so out of tune, keys missing and stuff. But they gave me a key so that I could go in there and practice. It was kept in a broom closet in
Mm.
this hallway. And so I would take my Chopin and my Bach and my Mozart and my
Mm.
Schumann in there and lock myself in this broom closet and bang away for hours. But it was great fun.
The time you spent in Spain, and we'll get into that later, but I portended your future, right? In some many ways.
Well, a little bit. I think one of the reasons that I love choral music so much is that I love language so much. As part of my doctoral degree, I had to study a lot of different languages. The main ones, for music, of course, French, Italian, German, and Latin. And so, of course, Spanish
Yeah.
is not on that list, but it's a Romance language. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of similarities there.
Well, I'm
Um,
going to jump ahead and tell our listeners that, as a reviewer, as I said, I've seen a lot of your work, and I can say without qualification that it was it 2 seasons ago or three when you did an all Brazilian
yes, about 2 years
music
ago.
concert. And of course, I want to talk about your husband, who is
Hmm.
from Brazil. and you've traveled there, your choir has sung there. I mean, you have,
Yeah.
I mean, that was for me a highlight of all of my years of you nailed it.
Oh,
You
thank you. We had
really,
so much
I
fun
love
doing that
Brazilian
concert.
music myself, and that's a whole other topic. I could talk to you about Brazil till the cows come home. But in any case, I knew that you spoke Spanish, and now you're fluent in Brazilian and Portuguese, correct?
Well, I'm conversant. I have a long way to go to be fluent, but my husband and I end up speaking about half in Portuguese here in our house. And
Mhm.
when I go to Brazil, I enjoy the challenge that I have when I use it. It's a beautiful language. Portuguese is a beautiful language. It's a difficult language. And there's so many sounds in Portuguese. You know, the first time, Tom, that I ever went to Brazil, long before I knew my husband, I was just going on vacation. And I made a mistake. I thought, how different can it be from Spanish? My Spanish is pretty good. I'm sure I'll get by. But I bought a little phrase book at the airport and I took it with me on the plane. I thought, well, I'll be on this plane for 12 hours. I have some time I can read and go to get some basic phrases. And oh my gosh, the numbers, the days of the week, the names of the month, none of it made any sense. And they have these crazy nasal vowels. And so I gave up. It took a lot more than I thought it was going to, but I've studied it now for a number of years and enjoy
Yeah.
it quite a lot.
Well, since we're there now talking of Brazil, all things Brazilian, tell me about how you met your husband and that story.
Yeah, my husband, his first name is Adriano, like Adrian, Adriano, but a common nickname for that is what we call him, Drico, Drico. And Drico and I met online, as happens more and more these days, I think. He had a lengthy career as a college professor in Brazil, teaching courses in business, business administration, and running a couple of MBA programs actually in southern Brazil where he was living. And we found each other in part because I had, you fill out those profiles, how tall are you? How old are you? What's your hair color? So I checked bald on the profile. Well, come to find out, he loves bald guys, and that was one of the things he put in his profile that he
Lucky
was seeking. And he said, "You were the first bald picture that showed up," and so away we went. So
Wow, that's so
I
good.
have my hair loss to credit my marriage.
Huh. You can't make that kind of stuff up.
I guess not.
So how long have you been together?
We met 9 years ago and we got married 8 years ago, coming up on our eighth anniversary next
And
month,
do
June 9th.
you have children? Or do
Yes.
you have children,
Yeah.
correct?
We have two sons. They're my stepsons. And we had to work for a long time to get permission for them to come here. And we tried getting student visas for them and tourist visas. And every time we were denied permission for them to leave Brazil to come to the United States. And I know some people who work at the State Department. I called them and said, "Can you help us with this?" And it just, we got nowhere. And finally, a friend of ours who's a paralegal that we know suggested applying for green cards for the boys. And I thought that doesn't make any sense because if you apply for a green card, you're telling the government you want them to live here permanently. And that's the whole reason they wouldn't give visas. He said, "Oh, no, they'll get a green card." And he was exactly right. We have two boys, and the younger one qualified because of his age at the time that we got married. He was young enough that I could be his sponsor. And so that meant his process went a little faster. So he got his green card over 3 years ago, came to live with us then. And his older brother had to be sponsored by his father, who's now a U.S. citizen. My husband's now a U.S. citizen, but that meant that his process wasn't quite as fast. So he's been with us coming up on 2 years.
Wow. And so how did you adapt or how have you adapted to being a dad?
Yeah, just at the time that all my friends my age are becoming empty nesters, my nest is filling up. And in fact, when I met Drico, I had a lovely three-bedroom condo over near the art museum, pretty close to Butler University. And then he moved in with me, and then the younger son moved in a couple years after that, and then the older son moved in after that, and we realized this is not working. We've also got a dog, we need more space. So one of the first things we did was sell the condo. We bought a house out in the suburbs. We live out near Geist. We're not on the water, but we're kind of in that area.
Hmm.
Everybody's got their own bedroom, and I have this wonderful office. I also have a music room that I can put my instruments in and
So
stuff.
I take it your kids are in school.
They're a little older. The older boy, Solano, is working. He's been working full time for about a year and a half at Kroger near us. He graduated from college in Brazil before he left Brazil, but he's interested now maybe in moving into a different line of work. And so he's been talking with some of the friends that I have at Ivy Tech about exploring some of their programs and job
Mhm.
training. His younger brother, Julio, is pursuing college education online. He's autistic, and Brazil has a online university that is designed for students with autism spectrum
Mhm.
disorder. He's in his third year out of four studying nutrition. Then we'll see what the next steps are for him after he graduates.
So you've got a family life and, sounds like you've done it all. You're balancing that with this great career that you have. So let's get back to that career. All right. So let's see, where did we leave off? We were talking about your overseas thing.
Yeah, so after my junior year ended, came back to Wabash and did my senior year and knew that I wanted to go to graduate school for music and was lucky enough to get admitted into Indiana University and their master's program in choral conducting. And I feel so fortunate because that was just a perfect place for me.
The
Um,
renowned Jacob School of Music.
it was not called that at the time. It was just the IU School of Music, but in fact, the legendary status was well in place by the time I got there. I studied with incredible faculty, and the IU graduate program in choral conducting is one of the first in our country. And it was founded by a German musicologist back in the 50s, and it became sort of a template for doctoral programs that sprang up at other schools all around the United States. Very often, those newer doctoral programs were being led by students who had graduated from the IU program. And so, in a way, this is very true. I tell my own students at Butler this all the time. Advanced choral scholarship is a very new phenomenon. It's less than a century old. And it really started here in the United States. And Indiana University and the University of Michigan were two of the first to start programs like that. So I feel very lucky that I got to go study there, did my master's degree, 2 years doing my master's degree, and then I was hired in sort of a faculty affiliate position, adjunct position at Earlham College. And I taught and conducted at Earlham College in Richmond for 2 years. And when that was over, I went right back to Indiana and started my doctorate. By the time I finished my coursework, I had gigs all over the state. I had a church choir in Lebanon, Indiana, and I had taught for a semester at the Purdue campus in Fort Wayne when they needed somebody. I was also doing some work with the symphonic choir because my teacher, Robert Porco, was the conductor of the symphonic choir during those years. So I was finishing up my doctorate and I had a gazillion part-time music jobs. Then I was conducting the church choir at Central Christian Church in downtown Indianapolis for 5 years. Wonderful folks there. I used to kind of sneak into the practice rooms at Butler University during those years to take scores that I was studying because at that time I didn't have a nice piano in my house. So if I wanted to play something or study a score sitting at a piano, I needed to go someplace where I could do that. And I would sneak into the practice rooms at Butler. This was long before I had a job there. And I always felt very sheepish, like I tiptoed down the hallway late in the afternoon, early evening when nobody's around. And I'd see Henry Leck's name on one door and Michael Schosberger's name on another door. They were the two choral people at the time. And I'd just think, oh, if only I could ever get a job at a place like Butler, I'd be so happy. I had no idea what the future held for me. But lo and behold, in April of 1996, I got a call from my teacher, Robert Porco. He had heard that one of the choral faculty at Butler was going to be leaving that year. And he said, you should call the dean and tell him you want that job right now. And so I said, okay, I'll call him when I get home. He said, no, I want you to go to my office, pick up my phone, and call him right now.
Seize the moment, huh?
I didn't know who the dean was, but somehow he had the name and the number. So I went down there and I made that call. It was the craziest confluence of events. It was late April. Butler was getting ready to finish their spring semester. They didn't have time to do a big search. They were desperate for a warm body just to put in this place for 1 year. And I called at exactly the right moment. Had lunch with the dean a week later, and they offered me a part-time 1 year job that started in the fall of 1996.
That's a Hollywood story if I ever heard one. That's so great. I mean, I'm a believer in destiny and fate and all those things. Yeah, that's wonderful. So that's
It
how you.
was wonderful. I felt so, so lucky. And my philosophy when I started, they weren't paying me very much money, but they gave me a lot of work to do. And I didn't care. I thought, I'm going to make them wonder how they ever got along without me because I want to stay here.
Mhm.
And so the 1 year part-time job turned into a 1 year full-time job. And then the next year, they did a search for my position for making it permanent. They said, we can't just designate you the person. We have to do a nationwide search. So they brought two other candidates in. I was a third, and I won the job and just finished my 29th year at Butler.
Okay. Did I hear you correctly? But how long had you been with the symphonic choir?
I first joined
And
the
that
symphonic
was that, would you
choir.
consider that was like a part-time gig or?
Well, I first started as a singer with the choir. My teacher was conducting in the
Gotcha.
90s. And
Okay.
so I had no job with them at all. I just was singing.
I see. You were singing. Okay.
Yeah. And then Mr. Porco, my teacher, made me the assistant conductor, a position that I held for several years. I got my own community choir up in Muncie, Masterworks Chorale, Muncie Masterworks Chorale. It's the first place I ever conducted the Brahms Requiem, first place I ever conducted the Beethoven Mass in C. We had a lot of fun stuff, but I couldn't keep singing in the symphonic choir. And it wasn't for about 6 years later when they were in the midst of a protracted search for a new artistic director. It had gone on way too long that they offered me the position, and I started my tenure with the symphonic choir in the spring of 2002.
Wow. And so there you were with two plum jobs, two very prestigious institutions. Wow.
Well, you're very kind, but I still, feel like I have to pinch myself in the morning to find out, am I really living this life? Because as you know, jobs in the performing arts are few and far between. So very often people get jobs through a crazy mixture of circumstances. Yes, talent and aptitude are a big part of it, but a lot of it is also just being in the right place at the right time. A lot of it is
That's been my story, a combination of talent, luck. I've done a little manifesting too, and I'm sure you have done that too. You
exactly,
you done
exactly. Kind of
that?
put it out
Yeah,
in
that
the
happened.
universe a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. It's fun, isn't it? Okay, so let's talk about the symphonic choir. You have been through how many music directors working in collaboration? I think people don't understand. The symphonic choir has a partnership with the ISO, correct? So
It's a very
explain your
unique
relationship.
situation. If you look around the country, Tom, Chicago, Cleveland, Atlanta, places like that, the orchestra has its own choir in those cities, and the choir is run by the orchestra. Our situation is quite different. We are close collaborators with the orchestra, but the Indianapolis Symphonic Choir is a fully independent entity. We were founded 88 years ago at the request of the ISO because they wanted a choir, but they didn't want to have it under their umbrella directly.
Why?
I wish I could have been a fly on the wall for those conversations. I'd love to know what that rationale was. I think it was brilliant. I think it serves the art form best to have the situation just as we have it because we get the best of both worlds and the community is the
I would
beneficiary.
think right off the top of my head, though, having been an arts administrator, it's a lot of work when you got those two large bodies you have to deal with, all that comes with managing that.
Yes, well, anytime we're collaborating with any group, it's a ton of communication, it's a ton of planning, and it's a lot of work. But one of the things that I've loved about this city, I'm sure you have experienced this too, people are not afraid of collaborating. People
No.
love to join together, things that we've done with Dance Kaleidoscope, with the Chamber Orchestra, with Clues Hall, with the ISO, on and on and on. They would never happen if people weren't willing to kind of share the spotlight and the stage with one another. Our community is the beneficiary because they get these wonderful Carmina Burana and
Oh,
Daphnis and
yeah.
Chloe productions.
Eric, I've had a lot of your colleagues on this podcast since I started over a year ago, One of the favorite topics I've had with artistic directors, especially, are these partnerships. The ISO with most recently the Indie Ballet and their partnership with the opera and their anniversary concert. You hear people talk about competition in other markets, but here, it's just, it's become pretty common, for people to partner up.
I think you're right. Two of the things that I'm most proud of being a part of were big collaborations that, for example, we did the Ravel, Daphnis, and Chloe with the ISO in Clues Hall. ISO was in the pit, my choir was on stage, Dance Kaleidoscope was also on stage, and Clues Hall was there as well, of course. We also did a similarly large production of Carmina Burana with the
Yeah.
Indianapolis Chamber Orchestra, American Pianists Association, the symphonic choir, the children's choir, dance kaleidoscope, on and on. My friends in other cities, when I tell them about these projects, they just shake their heads because
Yeah.
it's just impossible. They wouldn't know where to begin. Who do
Yeah.
you call first on something like that? It works in this community, and it really is a blessing to be a part of a place that like
I
it.
have been to most of those that you described,
I'm sure you have.
and I've seen some of the best around the country during my career. And for me, I have this bird's eye view, and I still amazed. There's so many people who have no clue that we produce world-class art here. There's no question.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I go to hear ISO concerts even when the choir's not singing, and I just shake my head in amazement at the level that's represented there. It's such a proud thing for us, just as proud as, having the Indianapolis 500.
Yeah, I'm putting it up there on that level. Indianapolis, there's always all this controversy about sports versus art in terms of funding and all that. But the truth of the matter is, the citizens of Indianapolis should take heart in knowing. And by the way, I hear this all the time from transplants from New York and LA and all over the world who come here and they discover that their needs are met in terms of both
Yeah,
their minds and souls,
yeah,
feeding their souls. You can do that here because this now we have so many choices, it's hard to keep up with it.
it sure is.
Of really excellent art. And then, of course, Butler University. Let's go there. I mean, the programs that they offer, there's a reason why people from all over the world come to participate in the dance program.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And, the music department is no small, effort either.
Our faculty in the music department are principal chairs in the Indianapolis Symphony and the Indianapolis Chamber Orchestra. I mean, there's nobody better in the state to study with than the faculty that I get to teach with at Butler University. It's such a proud thing. And one of the things that I think sets us apart at Butler is that we really, because of our foundation being a liberal arts kind of approach to education, we look at the whole student and we encourage our students who are pursuing a music ed track or a performance track to consider maybe adding another major outside of the
I
performing
didn't
arts.
know that. Huh.
Yeah, we call it music and more because we know now that 60% of our students are going to change their majors before they graduate, and more than that number are going to change careers during their adulthood, during their work time. And so we want to start now encouraging them to take a broad view at the things that interest them, to find the
Mhm.
points of connectivity and explore all of the parts of their brain and their interests.
We only have a few more minutes left, but I really want to talk very quickly about the vision that you follow and the programming. I've always been really impressed with your programming.
Oh, thank you.
And I'd really like to know, what is your criteria for your program for this symphony, for this choir?
Yeah, well, there's an expectation that we're going to do the well-known bedrock pieces of the choral orchestral repertoire, the Brahms Requiem, the Bach Mass in B minor, and we do those things, and we love to do those things.
Beethoven's Ninth, I was there, it blew my mind.
Yeah, well, we have another one coming up in just a few weeks
Really?
with the ISO Beethoven's Ninth to close their season in June. But I also feel like as our community becomes more diverse, our programming needs to reflect that. And so we have taken up music of the American Songbook, which I know is near and dear to your heart.
Right.
through our Mood Indigo programs over the years. And then we've also branched out with the Bossa Nova, the Brazilian concert that you heard a couple of years ago. We are incorporating more Jewish music into the repertoire that we're performing. We just sang the Chichester Psalms of Leonard Bernstein and one of Copland's masterpieces for a cappella chorus in the beginning. And we're also trying to shine a light on the music of composers that are lesser known, but as deserving as those big names that I've already mentioned. And in our April concert just last month, we got to perform The Credo by Margaret Bonds. Margaret Bonds was a Black American composer from the 20th century. She worked a lot with Langston Hughes. The Credo, choral music people know, is the central part of the Catholic Mass, but this was not that. The Credo that she composed used a text by the same name by Black poet and sociologist W.E.B. Du Bois, which was kind of a manifesto about the nobility of Black people and the equality of all human races in the eyes of the Creator. And so we got to perform that work in April. I was absolutely thrilled with the reception, both in the choir, the singers, primarily white singers who just felt so passionately about
Yeah.
singing this important music, and that piece got its own standing ovation in the concert from the packed audience that was there to hear
It
it.
just
It was a
occurred to
thrill.
me that, like in the theater now, and it was happening long before Black Lives Matter and George Floyd, that the arts have always been in the vanguard of social change through the transformative power of music, right? And so it's just so heartening to see all these organizations in Indianapolis, though, are they're trying
Yeah,
to choose repertoire and programming that reflects brown faces and black people. And that's what I think makes this a world-class city all around.
absolutely. I
And you
couldn't agree
guys
with
are
you more.
certainly, again with that Brazilian program. Okay, so I'm waiting to see when you're going to do an all Mexico program.
That would be a lot of fun. That would be a lot of fun.
All the countries would be great, You'll get around to it, right?
We sure will.
Yeah.
There's so much rich cultural heritage to explore.
Tell me about the singers, your relationship with the singers themselves. I mean, that's kind of a broad question, but
Well,
what
it's
do the singers mean to you?
one of the great blessings of my lifetime is to get to know the folks that comprise the Indianapolis Symphonic Choir, some of who've been singing for decades in this ensemble. And they put up with my bad jokes and my haranguing week after week and keep coming back for more and making such beautiful art. I've been richly blessed by knowing these folks from all walks of life, from all backgrounds, and I learn from them every week that we have a rehearsal. I come away the better for it because of what they choose to share with one another and with me. Not everybody in the choir is interested in being friends with the conductor, and that's totally fine. But I enjoy knowing a little bit about each of them. Some of them are looking for friendship, and we become kind of Facebook buddies or text messaging buddies or whatever. And that's a real gift that I get to enjoy because of that. Our singers come from all professions and all strata of every way you can slice and dice the community. Believe it or not, Tom, they re-audition every single year. They have to keep their place in the choir.
Many people, in my experience, including myself, found my tribe through the arts. I never fit in until I found people who were like-minded and needed to express themselves.
I see that borne out every day, especially in my teaching classroom. My choir room may be the one place where my students feel they can most be themselves.
Now, that was my
And
experience. My first love, and still is in many ways, is theater. And I found my peeps in the classroom and rehearsal rooms, and it changed my life.
thank heavens, right?
Oh, yeah. So, what is your long-term vision for this choir? You're already pretty much up there. Where would you like to be beyond where you are now?
I want to keep doing the things that we're doing. I want to have the net get cast more broadly in terms of the people that sing with us and that hear us sing. I want us to do everything we can to remove any obstacles to either participating or attending. This past spring, actually, our executive director, Jen Cooper, had the brilliant idea. Let's adopt a name your price model for our ticketing for the April concert so that the ticket price does not become an obstacle for somebody who wants to hear the music that we're making. And it was incredibly successful. I feel steps like that are just as important as are singing the Schoenberg Friede auf Erden, which is a work that we'll perform right with the Beethoven 9 in June with the ISO.
For better or for worse, DEI has become very controversial, the whole concept. But what are your thoughts on that? It's still an ongoing effort, no matter what's going on in Washington. What are your
You're
thoughts?
exactly right. Maybe we're calling it something different because certain terms have become kind of loaded for some people. But the heart of the matter is how we treat one another with a heart that is open and a spirit that welcomes all, regardless of background. That is the fundamental essence of the arts anyway, because the people who have talent to make this art, the talent gods don't just put all that talent in one group of people. They put it a little bit in everybody on the planet. And I want all of those folks singing for us.
Well, we're talking about literally voices.
Yeah,
In context of our conversation, you want those voices to be heard, literally and
absolutely.
figuratively, right?
Yeah.
Another term that has become very controversial in some quarters, the whole notion of woke. And, someone said it recently, some celebrity, I can't remember. Woke is all those people out there who just have a preference for beauty and the world around them. Something along those, I can't
Yeah.
remember, but it doesn't necessarily mean that people who want to express themselves through singing and dancing and reading or whatever, people need to just sort of chill and take into account the bigger picture, education and expression and all those things. But, it's been a pleasure talking to you again. I've seen so much of your work, and
Well, thank you.
tell us about your new season.
Yeah, well, all I can tell you is stay tuned for the official notice because we're still finalizing a few of the details. But we have a wonderful season coming up with some pieces that are new for us, including one that goes right to the heart of the acceptance of our friends in the LGBTQ plus community.
Oh, okay.
So we will make sure that you are on the list of first recipients of all those
Does that
details.
mean that you're going to have a little Broadway in there?
I'll just leave it at that for now.
There's a stereotype right there, but it's true. I really do believe if it hadn't been for blacks and gay people and Jews, we would not have show business. So there you
Yeah,
have
there you go. There you
it.
go.
Thank you so much. It's always a
My
pleasure.
pleasure. Thank you, Tom. Always enjoy talking with you, and thank you for all you do for the arts in our community.
And thank you for the contributions you've made to the landscape. It's been major.
Well, thank you.
Dr. Eric Stark, ladies and gentlemen. Talk to you later. I'll see you on the aisle.
Thanks, my friend. We'll see you soon.
Our thanks go out to our media sponsor, Urban Times. Urban Times is a monthly news magazine which serves as the official newsletter for 15 Indianapolis neighborhoods, offering news about development, arts and entertainment, and from the business community. Thank you for joining me on the aisle. Please subscribe to my podcast, and if you want to hear previous episodes, find them on the All Indiana Podcast Network, or listen to them wherever you get your podcasts. This is Tom Alvarez.
Who will take center stage on the podcast next? Your seat on the aisle with Tom Alvarez awaits. Follow Tom on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, and make sure to visit tomalvarez.studio. Watch Tom every other Thursday on Lifestyle Live on Wish TV, and make sure to listen every week here on the All Indiana Podcast Network.